Every single day, we're all moving through this invisible world that is absolutely teeming with life. It's on our skin, it's in the air we breathe, on basically every surface we touch. We're talking trillions of microscopic organisms just living, multiplying, and moving all around us. Now, most of them are totally harmless, but a select few, they're on a mission. And this is the story of their journey. So that brings up a really good question, right? If we're literally swimming in a sea of germs, why aren't we just constantly sick? Well, the truth is, only a tiny, tiny fraction of all these microbes are actually out to get us. Our bodies have these incredible defense systems, and honestly, most germs are either helpful or they're just minding their own business. But today we're focusing on the ones that aren't. And that brings us to our key term for this whole thing, the pathogen. This is the official name for a germ that can actually make you sick. Think of it as the villain of our story, right? These are the microorganisms that have figured out very specific ways to invade our bodies, use our resources for themselves, and, cause a lot of trouble in the process.
So who exactly are these culprits? Well, they're not some single unified army. They're actually a really diverse cast of characters, and each one has its own unique way of operating. So let's meet the main suspects on the most wanted list.
This table really breaks it down nicely. First up, you've got viruses. Think of them like microscopic pirates. They're not even fully alive. They're just bits of genetic code in a little protein shell, and their whole game is to hijack our cells to make more of themselves. Then you have bacteria. These are actual single-celled organisms, totally alive, and they multiply all on their own. Next up, fungi, things like yeasts and molds, which spread through these tiny things called spores. And finally, we've got protozoa, which are single-celled parasites that absolutely need a host to survive. Each one plays by a completely different set of rules. So every successful pathogen, like any good villain, needs a plan, a step-by-step process to get from its hideout to its next target. And in the world of public health, we call this the chain of infection. It's basically the blueprint for how any infectious disease spreads. And here it is, the whole heist plan laid out. For an infection to actually spread, every single one of these 6 links has to connect perfectly. It all starts with the infectious agent, our pathogen, which is just hanging out in a reservoir. It needs an escape route, the portal of exit. Then it travels using its getaway vehicle, the mode of transmission. It finds a new portal of entry, and finally it infects its target, the susceptible host. Now here's the crucial part. If you can break just one of these links, the whole plan fails. The chain is broken. So out of all those links in the chain, where's the weak spot? Where do we have the most power to stop this whole process? Well, it's often that 4th link, the mode of transmission. Think about it. This is the pathogen's journey between hosts. It's out in the open. Understanding how that getaway vehicle works is the absolute key to stopping it in its tracks. And that getaway vehicle usually falls into one of 2 main categories. You've got direct transmission, which is pretty straightforward. It's physical contact, or when someone coughs or sneezes, those bigger droplets that only travel a few feet. But then you have indirect transmission, which is way stealthier. This can be airborne, with tiny particles just hanging in the air for hours. It can be vehicle-borne, hitching a ride on contaminated food or doorknob, or it can be vector-borne, where an insect like a mosquito or a tick does all the dirty work for the pathogen. Okay, so let's say the heist was a success. The pathogen completed its journey and got inside a host. Now what? Well, getting sick isn't like flipping a switch. It actually unfolds in a pretty predictable 5-act drama right inside your body. This timeline shows you how it usually goes. It all starts with the incubation period. The pathogen is in there, it's multiplying like crazy, but you feel totally fine. Then comes the prodromal stage. This is when you start to feel a little off, just not quite yourself. After that, boom, the period of illness. This is when you're full-blown sick, and it hits a peak called the acme. But then your immune system starts to win the fight, and you enter the period of decline. And finally, convalescence, which is just the fancy word for recovery. This whole timeline thing leads to a really practical and pretty important question. We usually think we're only contagious when we feel the absolute worst, right? But is that really true? Could you be spreading a disease before you even know you have it? And the answer is, well, it's complicated. It totally depends on the disease. Look at this. With something like bacterial meningitis, you're contagious during the incubation period before you have any symptoms at all. For chickenpox, you can be contagious for up to a week before that telltale rash even shows up. With a common cold or flu, you become contagious right when you start to feel a little crummy in that prodromal stage. And get this, for some diarrheal diseases, you can still be contagious long after you feel perfectly fine again.
Okay, so we've met the villains, we've seen their heist plan, and we know how they operate inside our bodies. But now for the good news. This isn't a one-sided fight. We have our own playbook, a counterattack. And it all goes back to that chain of infection. The goal of all prevention is to break one of those links.
And it all starts with your personal toolkit. These might seem like simple things, but they are incredibly powerful. Every time you wash your hands, you're breaking the mode of transmission link. When you cover a cough, same thing. When you get vaccinated, you're making yourself a much less susceptible host. These aren't just little suggestions. They are proven, battlefield-tested strategies for derailing a pathogen's journey. And of course, on a larger scale, we've got the heavy artillery. We have powerful medicines that specifically target different kinds of pathogens. Antibiotics that go after bacteria, antivirals to stop viruses. And then you have public health systems using tools that are kind of like detective work, like disease surveillance and contact tracing, to figure out where a pathogen is hiding and stop it from spreading any further, breaking that chain for a whole community. So that brings us to the big final question. The fight against infectious diseases. It's never really over. Pathogens are always evolving, and things like global travel and a changing climate are constantly creating new opportunities for them to get around. The pathogen's journey is a story as old as life itself, and understanding that journey is our absolute best weapon in preparing for whatever comes next.